Hello, my name is Carlton Coulter, and today I'm going to be comparing two versions of Dynamics CRM. I'm going to be comparing Dynamics CRM 2016, also known as version 8.2, and Dynamics 365, also known as version 9.0. When we compare those versions of Dynamics CRM, we really need to take a look at a couple of different things to really understand the differences. First, we need to take a look at the user interface. How is it different from 8.2 to 9.0? What's changed, what's new, and how does that affect how we work? We also need to take a look at the developer experience and compare how it's different from 8.2 to 9.0. Are there different libraries we need to call? Are there different ways we need to do things? Are there new ways that we can do things more efficiently? And lastly, we also need to take a look at on-premise versus the cloud. What are the new features and capabilities that are available to us when we move to the cloud? What does moving to the cloud really mean, and what does it entail? Today, we're just going to take a look at the user interface differences between version 8.2 and 9.0. In the 8.2 interface, you'll notice that I've color-coded the nav bar up at the top red. And in the 9.0 interface, you'll notice the nav bar at the top is green. That way you can quickly identify which interface we're looking at when we're doing our compare and contrast. Now, let's go ahead and start by looking at some basic items like the navbar navigation. You'll notice that up here in the 8.2 interface, we have to click on these drop downs that will show the different areas that we have, and then it will show the groups and the different items within those groups. We are able to click on each one of those and it will pull up a different section. So if we want to pull up cases, we can go to service and then cases, and it will show us all the cases in the system. Likewise, in the 9 interface, it's a little bit different. We still can pull up the area, but we have to click on it in the bottom left. And then we click on service. We still go to the group service, and then cases, and then it will show us our grid of all the different cases. But there are some differences. One, the grid doesn't really look the same. You can still sort columns by clicking on them up and down, and you can still filter data. Just like you can in 8.2, you can click on columns and sort them up and down, and you can filter data once you've turned it on. Now let's go ahead and look at the items in the top right. You'll notice in the 8.2 interface, we have still 4 icons just like we do in the 9.0 interface, but they're a little different. We start with search, and then we go to our recently viewed items, which we can click on, and it will show us all the different items that we've pulled up recently. We have a quick create, or new, and then an advanced find. If we go ahead and quick create a new contact, John Smith, you'll notice that it pulled down from the top, and we can just save, and then it shows us whether or not we created it, and it allows us to pull up that record. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the same thing in the 9.0 interface. We still have 4 buttons, right? We have search, we have task flow, which is a new feature. When we click on task flow, it shows us a couple of different options that we have available to us. Now we can create our own task flows, but here are some of the built-in ones. We can update a contact, for example. So I can run that task flow, and it shows me this right navigation pane that kind of slides out like the quick create. I can search for a record, so I can pull up one of my recent records like myself, and just click next, and it will start walking me through the process of updating this contact. The task flow controls each individual step and what is shown to the user. So now I can enter in some information, like maybe I can put in my marital status, I am married, and click next. And you can see that it continues to guide me through the information. Then I click done, and it has updated that contact for me. And then we have new, which is a quick create, and advanced find. If you want to view your recent items, it's actually in the navigation on the left. You can expand it and click on the recent items. Now let's go ahead and quick create a new contact. So we're going to click on the plus, and you'll notice that it drops down all the different types of records that we can create. We'll click on contact, and it slides out from the right instead of from the top. So now I can go ahead and create John Smith and click Save and Close. And instead of it showing this pop-up at the top that I can view the record, it now shows it in the middle at the bottom. So I can click on that and view the record, and it just opens it inside that frame in the same window. So now I can view the contact record. Let's go ahead and go through some of the differences on the form itself. In the 8.2 interface, you have different tabs, and you have this hamburger menu so you can navigate to the different tabs. So we have Summary and we have Details. If I click on Details, it actually scrolls the page down to the Details section. Likewise, if I click on Summary, it scrolls back up to the Summary section. And if I collapse Summary, then I can see Details nicely at the top of the page. You'll also notice that each one of these sections within the form itself is only denoted by this header title, like it's bolded. So it doesn't show you that there's any separation from personal and personal notes other than that bolded text. In the V9 interface, it's pretty different. We actually have the section titles still, but we also have this border box around the different sections so that we can quickly identify that it's grouped together and that they're like items. So if we go ahead and go to the Details tab, you'll notice that we have Personal, Marketing, Contact Preferences, and then we have the different form fields underneath it. Now, if we go back to Summary and we scroll down on the form, you'll notice that the top section, it kind of gets a little bit smaller, but all the tabs are still visible. So we can still navigate through by just clicking on the different tabs. We don't necessarily have a need anymore for that hamburger button. Now, we can also click on Related and view related cases for this record. Now, to do the same thing inside of 8.2, we have to go up here in the nav bar, click on the down arrow next to John Smith, and then go to Cases. Once this is up, the form is no longer really visible. We have to click on John Smith to go back to the form. And if we go back to the form, we can't jump right back to the related items that we just had visible. Contrast that with V9, we pull up the related cases, it just adds it as a tab on the same form. So now I can still go to Details and Summary and jump right back to Cases. In 8.2, if I want to go back to my cases, I have to click back on that drop down and go back to Cases. I have to re-navigate the entire way instead of it just having a tab. Now let's go ahead and create a case for John Smith. So we're going to click Add New Case. It pulls down the Quick Create from the top, and I can put in my title. So I'm going to call this 8.2 and click Save. And it will go ahead and create my case. Now that my case has been created, I can go ahead and click on it to open it up. And so I now have my case up. Now I can go ahead and collapse Summary and expand the Enhance SLA details, and we can see that I have a first response by KPI that is in progress, and we can see how much time I have left on this, that I need to respond to this case in about an hour. Likewise, if I go over to the 9.0 interface and create a record, I can go ahead and create a new case. It now pops out from the right, and I'm just going to call this case 9.0 and click Save and Close. It creates my record, adds it to the grid, but it also provides me that pop-up at the bottom again so that I can click on View Record. Once I have the record up, I can view my process, and I can either have this pinned off to the right, or I can actually just click on it and it will show up here. So I can pin this stage to the flyout over here, and then I can see each process I go through it. In 8.2, we see that process up here at the top. It has the different fields that I can update as part of that process. In 9, just like in 8.2, I can view my Enhanced SLA details. So I can click on my Enhanced SLA details, and we can see that I have an hour to complete my first response. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the next stage on each one of these. So now I can find similar cases that I'm on the research stage in the 8.2 case, and in the 9.0 case, I can do the same thing, just click next stage, and now I'm in the research stage. And here I can see that it's assigned to Brad. I can also see how long it's been in this, that it's been active for 1 minute, and it's been active for less than 1 minute in the research stage. I don't have my find cases anymore here because it doesn't really need to be there. We can always find cases that are related to it just by going to the case relationships and viewing similar cases. In addition to those minor differences in how things look and appear, there are some other differences too. For example, on the form itself, we have all of these different controls on the form, but we can actually build our own controls and put them on the form, whereas in V8.2, we couldn't do that. We actually had to use a web resource and embed it on the form. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the custom controls that are built into V9. You can see here on the right that we have a slider control. This controls a whole number input. A lot of these do. You have a star rating control so that you can rate items and add that to a form. You also can change your number input so that way the form allows you to use plus and minus as well as editing it. And you can control the steps that it goes. So you could still come in here and edit it and put in a strict value if you needed to, but then you can also increase it and decrease it by the step amount that you set up. The same goes for the knob value, arc knob, and radial knob. You'll notice that I use the same form field for each of these knobs. So if I change one value, it changes all of them. And so we can actually increase this all the way up and see what the different values look like. In addition, you also have an editable grid. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the editable grid tab. You'll notice immediately that the editable grid looks different than the normal grid. You can group by different fields that you have in the view. So I can group by things like category. And so that way it will break out the items that I have by category since I have a category option set. I can click on the field at any point in time and change that value if I needed to. I can also edit the other fields such as soccer ball. So I can change that to maybe tennis balls. We can change the quantity to something like 200, and so we can control these different aspects. Also, you'll notice that if we edit these, we can keep editing them and making changes, and once we click save, our current row will be updated. If you don't click save and you click on another field or another row and start editing another row, that previous row is already going to be saved. It's going to be saved as soon as you start editing that other row. So just to review, some of the navigation changes that we went through. I showed you the nav bar navigation differences, how we no longer have navigation from the top of the nav bar as part of the breadcrumbs. Now we have a left navigation system. I also showed the recent records, how it's no longer a button up at the top right, now it's actually part of the navigation on the left. I showed you the quick create and how that works. It no longer slides down from the top and now slides out from the right. And we went through forms. I showed you the sections, how they have borders, the tabs and how to navigate between different tabs in version 8.2 versus version 9.0. And I also showed you related items, how you can pull up items related to another object. And I touched lightly on some of the new features in version 9.0, such as custom controls like the arc knob and the star rating. And you can even create your own custom controls, so it's really extensible. I showed you the editable grid and how you can use it to group items as well as edit items. And I touched lightly on the task flow at the very beginning. This video barely scratches the surface on what's new in version 9.0. To see all of the changes in version 9, you can go to this website here. It outlines everything that's new in version 9 in the Customer Engagement module, but most of the changes in here are changes that are across the entire platform, so it's a great place to start to look at all of the changes in version 9. If we scroll down, you'll notice that some of the changes I actually went over throughout this video, such as the borders around areas or sections, and we've seen the message and icon areas to indicate that areas are empty instead of just showing nothing. This concludes part 1 of comparing version 8.2 and version 9.0 of Dynamics CRM, the user interface comparison. What's next? In part 2, I'll talk about the developer differences between version 8.2 and 9.0, and then in part 3, I'll talk about on-premise versus the cloud, and moving from on-premise to the cloud. Thank you for watching part 1, comparing the user interface in version 8.2 and version 9.0.